Okay, let me get these lights right. Okay, there we go. How is everybody doing tonight? Well, it's tonight in the East anyway. It's still the evening, I guess, in the Western United States. And of course, if you're watching from anywhere in Europe, England, then it's kind of after midnight. But here it is not quite 9 p.m. Eastern time. I hope everybody's doing well. As I was stated, when we had the think tank on Sunday night, I made the comment, man, I've been sitting in this chair quite a bit, over the last few days. Let me maneuver this microphone a little bit better. And because, of course, I had the interview with Dr. Telesco last Thursday, which I'm going to talk about. I had the game show on Saturday. I had the think tank on Sunday. Of course, we have the live show last week, and now we have the live show tonight. Been spending a lot of time in this chair, in addition to the fact that this is where I sit, where I record my part of the episodes that you hear every Friday. So a lot of time being spent in this room, in this chair, at this desk, at this computer. Crazy. Hello, Concha. Joyce Rivatuzo. Joyce, how are you doing? How is your husband doing? You've been on my mind. Laura, Christine. Thank you for watching on Saturday night during the game show, Christine. I saw you. Jasmine, Valerie, Kathy, LaFord, Carrie, Cherie, Susan, Indy, Carrie. Got a lot to talk about tonight, as you would expect. If you don't know, I am now doing, hold on one second, once again, getting this new setup, trying to get this one light a little less bright. Okay. If you don't know, I'm now doing this, hello, Kelly, this live show with my Mac computer instead of my Dell, because frankly, it's easier to hook up this microphone and everything to the Mac than it is to the Dell. And I'm going to start using the microphone. In fact, on Sunday night, we had talked about maybe me getting like a cordless mic to clip to my shirt or something, because it does sound a lot better. I think I'm ready to move up to that level of audio for these live shows. Now that I've gotten to watch how they do the game show, and of course, all of those competitors, contestants, other podcast hosts, and John himself, we're using some form of microphone, like the one you're seeing here, or a tiny one, clip-on wireless mic. That's probably the direction I'm going to go as well, probably. So thinking about that, I've not ordered anything yet, but I've already talked to some of my assistants about that. Lisa and Sharon. Sharon says, game show was fun to see. Yeah, I had a good time. I'm going to be talking about that too, Sharon. And Pamela, how are you? As you're watching this evening, tonight, please do not forget to give this video, this live show, a thumbs up. I would like to have as many likes of the video as we have live viewers. So however you have to do that, please do. And of course, for each of your devices, it's a little bit different. Whether you're on a computer or your phone, an iPhone or an Android phone, it just depends. Vegas Girl, how are you? And Miranda, what's up? It's hard to believe this, but today is May 13th, 2020. And hello, Karika. That's a new name. You must be new, Karika. I think I would remember a unique name like that. 22 years ago yesterday, I arrived in Las Vegas, a place that I ended up living from May 12th of 1998 until September 28th of 2011. But I got there to Las Vegas May 12th, 1998. I had left Pennsylvania on May 10th. And the first day I made it to Lawrence, Kansas. And then the next day, on the 10th and on the 11th, I drove to Evergreen, Colorado, where I stayed with a friend of my brother Michael's at his place. And then the next day, I was able to make it the whole way to Las Vegas. And that's where I lived in various locations around Las Vegas until, like I said, end of September 2011. Seems like yesterday that I moved to Las Vegas. Seems like yesterday that I moved here. Those years in Las Vegas went so fast. It's crazy. Angel, what's going on? Not new, just time zone. Okay, it's 3 a.m. Karika. Where are you? You gotta. If you're gonna tell me it's 3 a.m., you gotta tell me where you are. I gotta know. That would be interesting to me. Vegas. Why did you leave Las Vegas? Great place to live. Well, it's usually a great place to live. Vegas. Some different reasons combined. I think at the time I just needed a change of scenery. In addition, my parents were coming to Florida at the time every year up to the Panhandle. And I already have a brother that lives here in Largo, Florida, about 20 minutes from where I live now. And it was those combination of things that brought me here. Kind of felt like I'd gotten into a little bit of a rut in Las Vegas. Although I was, it was a good place and everything. But I tell you right now, today in 2020, and I've been saying this for a while, that I do miss Las Vegas, and my intention is to move back there one of these days, despite having this nice place where I live in Florida right now. I will admit, Vegas girl, that probably if I had to do it over again, I probably would have stayed there. Just to be honest. But this is where I am in Florida right now. And of course, I have a lot of flexibility as to where I can move and where I can live and everything. So Vegas is always on my mind. But yes, right now, the city going through some tough times. But I think that'll be changing before the year's out. Joyce giving me the thumbs up. Valerie says Fremont Street reopened today. That's nice. I used to work at the Plaza, Valerie. Used to work on a Rat Pack show at the Plaza right there at the end of Fremont Street. And Indy is asking me, Ed, did you have a job lined up before you went to Las Vegas? No, I did not. I went out there without everything that I owned. I could fit in the Dodge Ram Charger that I owned at the time. And I moved out there. I moved in with one of my best friends to this day, Brad Carastori, and his girlfriend at the time, Andrea. They are now married. We lived together from May until January of 1999, and then I moved out on my own. I lived there till 2011. Brad lived there till 2013, and then he actually moved back to our hometown of Leechburg, Pennsylvania, which is where he lives now. Technically, West Leechburg, technically. Hello, Paula. But yeah, I just went out there, just crossed my fingers, Indy. And the first job that I got was the job that I always talk about from 7-Eleven, which is the worst job I ever had. In retrospect, I would have held out for something better. In retrospect, I wish that I would have maybe got a job, actually working for one of the casinos or hotels. Of course, that makes a lot of sense. And probably would have gotten involved in production of shows or something like that a lot earlier than I did. I didn't start doing that till 2005. Probably should have tried to do that in, 98, 99. That would have been a lot of fun from the beginning. Vegas, a few strips and casinos around the strip are opening today. Okay. Hello, Leah. Jill. Jill is here. You know, Jill, I was going to be mentioning you tonight. Didn't know that you would be in here, but everyone, I want you to know that since we had our live show last Wednesday, Jill had a son, and his name is Ezekiel. And since Jill is in here, I guess she is doing fine. And being that she's in here, I guess her son is doing fine. So I want you all to wish her a congratulations on that. I've seen the pictures on Facebook. And he is a cutie, Jill, for sure. I'm so happy that everything came out really, really well. Jill is been a listener of Unfound for a long time. And actually, I talked to her on the phone once because she has some, her job is counseling. And I talked to her maybe a couple years ago. I remember talking to you, Jill, on the phone, and that was nice. So she's been a supporter of Unfound for a long time, and I'm so happy. I believe that is her second child now. So thank you all for congratulating her. And Jill, thank you for making time for the live show not long after having your son. Thank you. Something funny from my personal life that happened on Saturday. And once again, I'm going to get into the interview and the game show, among other things that I have on the docket for tonight. But on Saturday, it must have been maybe about 3 hours to 4 hours before. No, this happened on Friday. Yeah, this happened on Friday. I went and played disc golf with my brother Brian. Well, before I went, I was throwing some trash out. And in this building, which is 18 floors, they have a trash chute, and its door is right there outside my door to my condo. And because I was in a rush and everything, I had opened up the door to the chute, and the door is on a very, very heavy spring. If you open it, shuts fairly quickly. Well, I thought I had my foot blocking the door so it wouldn't close back up because I had a couple things to put down the chute. Well, I guess I didn't have my foot close enough to the door because I threw the first thing down the chute, put my foot down to block the door, turned around to get the next thing. And when I turned back, my foot had missed the door and I ran right into the door like this. So here's the door swinging closed, and I hit the door right like that. So I don't know if you can tell that. You can kind of tell, like right when I get the light right there, I have a bump on my head. It hurt. I still went and played, but I put ice on it. And I thought, am I going to have this bump on my head with this black and blue mark for the game show on Saturday night? Now, it didn't get that bad. It never did. You really can't tell in this light, but it is a little discolored, but it never got black and blue or anything. But it hurt. That's the hardest I've hit my head in probably over 30 years. I'm not really clumsy or anything. And, you know, I was a fax machine and printer mover for many years, never hurt myself or anything. So I'm usually pretty coordinated and everything, but man, I did it on Friday. Wow. Did I hit my head? I wouldn't say it hurt, saw stars, but I was like, oh man, that's going to leave a mark. And I immediately put some ice on it, but it's still a little bit of a bump there and it's still a little tender, but the whole time I'm thinking, man, it's going to look really weird if I show up for this game show on Saturday night and have this big black and blue mark, right there, but I'm okay. Yeah, everybody congratulating Jill. And yes, Carrie says, oh, Lottie, that's a total Carrie move. Hitting my head. I didn't. Yeah, well, I did it. So thank you, everyone, for sending some love to Jill and her new son. What else is going on? Just personal stuff. I don't know. Got a few things. I have a few things ordered that are going to be showing up within the next probably couple weeks. I ordered a new disc golf bag. I really needed one. Mine's getting a little ratty. So I have one of those on order and a couple other things, but just been chilling out. It's really what I've been doing. But let's get into some of the things that have gone on over the past week. Let's talk about my interview with Dr. Telesco last Thursday. Of course, that was the day after the last live show. As I stated on the episode on Friday, I couldn't have been more pleased on how the interview went. I thought it was great. The hour went so quickly. And a lot of people have mentioned after viewing the interview, whether they watched it live or afterwards, that Dr. Telesco and I seem to have a lot of very good chemistry, the talking back and forth. And I'll have you know that is that's something that I noticed very early on with her. That is not something that was just created with that interview. I would say from the first time we spoke that I think we play off each other very well. And I think that really showed in the interview. If you don't know, the video has now been viewed over 1,200 times on their Facebook page, which is easily the highest viewed video on the page. And they've quite a few videos, not as many videos as we have on our YouTube channel, but a few. They have 20, maybe to 20 to 30 or something like that videos. And that interview is now number 1 on their page. And I think we have about 300 views on the YouTube channel for that. So between both areas, about 1,500 views. That's pretty good. That's pretty good for us. And of course, that is not close to how many downloads we get for the podcast every week. But I think that's pretty good. I don't know if me doing interviews with people are, the biggest attraction. I think that the episodes, of course, drive the program. That is what Unfound is based on. That's why people are subscribed. That's why people, I think, come and subscribe to listen to the episodes, not necessarily see me do some interviews. But I know a lot of you are interested in that as well. And I hope to be doing more of them. So I'm not, sad or angry or disappointed or anything that the views aren't higher than they are. I actually think that's pretty good. And in fact, those numbers are higher than the numbers we get for the live shows, most of the live shows that we've done here on Wednesday nights. That's just the way it is. This is not unlike, we'll be talking about the game show in a moment, but unlike John Lorden's show, his is a video-based show. He's on YouTube, nowhere else. Whereas Unfound is an audio program, so I wouldn't expect a lot of people to go outside that realm. Carrie says, my hand slipped trying to move a heavy cabinet the other day at work and totally punched a metal racking system. Hand hurts a wee bit now. Ouch, Carrie. Gail says it was a good interview. Thank you, Gail. Sharon says, I like Dr. Telesco. Joyce says, thanks. I'd love the interview with Dr. Telesco. Thank you, Joyce. Thank you, Christine. So, and in fact, I text back and forth with Dr. Telesco today, just wondering if she had seen how many times the video had been viewed. And what she had said to me, at least the way I understood it, is that, she is not the boss of the college. She has a couple of administrators above her who watched the interview, and they liked it a lot too. So I'm hoping that will lead to some additional interviews that we can do. She'd talked maybe about doing something every month. I'd certainly be up for that. Maybe we can talk about some other disappearances and some other issues regarding missing persons cases in general, which is a topic that I really love. And then maybe this fall, if schools do open up, maybe go down there and speak to some classes. I think that interview and how well it went will open up to, more opportunities. Being that Joyce is in here, of course, her daughters did get mentioned during that interview with Dr. Grace Telesco, and those emotions that I showed during that interview are absolutely real. absolutely real. I think it's disgusting that how law enforcement in this state could forget about two missing girls, two sisters who disappeared on the same day, that are connected still to, to this day, to an unsolved murder. It should never happen. But that is essentially what went on for some decades. And I'm glad that we were we were able to turn that around when we covered their disappearances back in April, I believe, of 2017. So I'm glad I got that on there for everybody that views that interview, to not just hear about Dorianne Myers' disappearance, but hear about the McDaniels disappearances as well. Kristen says, if you're still taking questions, huge debate in all things Plymouth. Is the cases of increasing or decreasing in Florida? I don't know what way it's going, Kristen. All I know is we have certainly opened some things up. Some restaurants are opening up, of course, with limited capacity. I think 25% capacity or something a little higher than that. And I know some bars have opened up, but I don't believe gyms have opened up. So I don't know what the actual number is, Kristen, but things have certainly opened up here a bit. The beaches have opened up here a bit as well. I've certainly noticed that where I live. Carrie says, great interview. Would love to see more of that content as well as what you do now. Completely understand it's a lot of work. Yeah, we do a lot of things here, Carrie. It doesn't go lost on me. I certainly, how else would I put that? I certainly do notice that not only we do the episodes, but we do this live show, we do the think tank, and we do a lot of other things behind the scenes at Unfound. And I think this is a good conversation, being that the team episode just came out this last Friday, that I don't want to pat ourselves on our back too much or break our arms doing it, but we certainly do provide a lot more content than a lot of other programs out there. I think one of the reasons, obviously, is that a lot of these hosts that that do podcasts that you listen to do have other jobs. For example, on Saturday night, I don't know if maybe I'm speaking out of school, but the guys at Generation Y, Justin and Aaron, that's not all they do. They do have what you might call regular jobs. I don't know what those are, but I do know that they have regular jobs. So their time is limited. Even though I know that, Generation Y is a very, very, very popular podcast that's been around for about 5 years. They have a lot of downloads. My impression is they have a larger audience than Unfound does, which is fine. And I do think that they make a couple bucks from their program. That's fine. Whereas me, this is all I do. So I have more time to do the live show, to do the think tank, and probably interact with a lot of you viewers and listeners more than a lot of podcast hosts do. And so I'm trying to take advantage of me having more time to provide more content. Of course, that's not something new. That's something that we have been doing for a while. So that also gives me the opportunity, of course, to do an interview with Dr. Telesco as well. I'm glad we were able to put it together. I have to admit that when it got canceled back at the beginning of April, I thought, well, that might not be something that we might be able to do until the fall. And it was Dr. Telesco's idea to do what we ended up doing. And I was perfectly fine with that. And I have to admit, I wasn't nervous at all. I think a lot of people get nervous before interviews. In fact, some of my assistants, while I was interviewing them, before I was interviewing them last week, said they were nervous. But I wasn't nervous talking to Dr. Telesco at all. Of course, I had some notes and things just in case my brain locked up, but I really did not need them. So it was good. It was really good. So that went well. I hope we can do it again soon. And I think that what I will be doing, I was going to do it today, did not get to it. I'll be sending that video to the other places that I have the prospects of speaking at. So they can see a little bit more about me. They can kind of see me in action, at least in an interview situation, which I think will be very helpful for them to get a further idea about who I am, what I say, what we're doing here. And I think that should increase the chances that I get to go to those schools and speak, and then that may lead to, of course, more opportunities, which is, of course, a big goal for me in 2020 to speak at a lot of these schools. Kristen says your style is so unique. I always recommend you in all sites and groups. I think your technique is by far the best. Kristen, I'm blushing. Thank you. I often say that if people, and you're not the first person to say that, it's unique. I'm not saying I'm the best or something. Absolutely not. But my style is unique, probably because before I started this program, I never really listened to many other true crime podcasts. I joke around, but it's true. I've never listened to the podcast Serial at all. I kind of know what it's about. I know it's from NPR and everything, and I've heard some other podcasts, but I think because that podcast was so popular that then other people who started their podcasts after that copied it. It's kind of the idea that I get. And since I never heard it, I couldn't copy it. And so what you hear from Unfound is completely unique. I did not rip off any other program that I see anywhere, I've heard anywhere. So if you're going to use the word unique, that may be the reason, because I came into this kind of, I wouldn't say with blinders on. I just didn't really know everything else that was going on out there. So I didn't have I couldn't even think about copying anybody else because I didn't listen to anybody else. Christine says the game show is so much fun. Well, let's talk about that, Christine. Thank you for allowing me to segue. Love that word. Segue into the game show. It's funny. And I told my assistants about this. I was way more nervous doing the game show than I was doing the interview. Why is that? I think it's because I am competitive. I think so. I can't help it. I am the type of person that if I'm not, at disc golf tournaments, if I'm not playing well, I'm not having a good time. I'm not out there. I get along with my fellow players. I'm friendly. I think I show good gamesmanship. I compliment people when they make great putts or have great throws. I have no problems doing any of that. And I do that whether I'm playing well or playing poorly. But trust me, if I'm playing poorly, I'm not having any fun. Just the way I am. I'm like that in disc golf. I'm like that at trivia when I play with my team, of course, before all the restrictions happened with the virus. I've been like that for a very, very long time. It's just put in me. I don't know if it's genetic or environmental. That's just the way I am. So I think I was nervous because I wanted to play well. Started off well, kind of blew it in the middle part, mainly because I missed a question. Somehow I skipped a question, so I got 0 points. And then kind of got better at the end when I had to write some of those jokes. Some of them were not that good, but then a couple of them I thought were really good. So I ended up coming in third out of 4 contestants. And, I have no problems with, the other hosts, the contestants. They played great. I'm not trying to be bitter, but I will admit, I wish I would have won. So, but I would do it again. It was fun. And I do appreciate John for inviting me. As I've said, John and I really don't know each other that well. We've had a few emails back and forth over the last few years, but of course we've not worked together. We've never done a program together. We've covered a few of the same disappearances, but that's about it. So being that he thought of me to invite me on the program, I really enjoyed it. It gave me a chance to wear one of my Iron Maiden shirts and got a chance maybe for some of you to see a side of me maybe you don't see. So there's that. And I think the other thing that came out of it was even though I do this show and I talk a lot, we usually go for an hour and a half here. and I do the program by myself. There are no other, hosts for Unfound, but I'm really not that much of a conversationalist. I think you saw that on Saturday night. I can talk and everything, but really, when you get me in a group of people, seriously, I'm more of a listener than a talker. I really am. And at least for example, when I go play trivia, I'm definitely not the biggest talker in that group by far, even though people may get that impression of me when they see me do this live show, for example, where I go an hour and a half straight. I'm really not much of a conversationalist, big talker, or anything like that. I'm perfectly willing to sit back and listen to what other people have to say. And I try to use those skills when I do the interviews. Kristen said, I'd be as red as my hair. I'd be so uncomfortable being interviewed. I think that's the way a lot of people are, Kristen. I think with me, at least with Dr. Telesco, I think I'd gotten to know her, and we weren't exactly going in cold. We knew what we were going to be talking about, and that certainly put me at ease. I've been interviewed before. I was interviewed by that radio station, by that guy, way back in 2018 when Thomas Brown's episode came out. And I remember where I was. I was in South Carolina at what was it? Was it Hilton Head, where my mom and dad were at the time? And I'd gone up to see them. I actually did that interview from where they were staying up there. That's when my mother was still alive. And I don't remember being nervous for that either. So I don't know. All I can say is for the game show was a lot more nervous. It was a great cause. It is a great cause, Christine. Thank you. But it's funny. You should know something about the game show. That at that point, if you've watched it or you haven't watched it yet, it's about the 11:30 mark where John asks me to tell a joke. That was totally unscripted. I did not know he was going to ask me that. I had no idea. Zero. He just kind of pulled that out. And luckily, I had a joke that was PG that I could tell. And that was the, what do you get when you cross an elephant and a rhino? Elephino. I've known that joke for at least 35 years. And I don't know the last time that I've told it. Probably maybe it's been 30 years. But somehow it just stuck up in my head. And 35 years later, here I get to tell it. So that's how that happened. That was totally unscripted. So there we have the interview. We have the game show. From what I know, once again, I hope I'm not speaking out of school. John says he's going to be doing those game shows till the end of this month. And then I think he'll reassess whether he's going to continue it. Of course, he started doing it because of what's been going on and raising some money for people who have lost their jobs. And I think that's great. And I think we raised like $500 that night. But he's not in the game show business. He's in the true crime business. And I'm sure it takes a little bit to put that all together. And, maybe it might be taking away from, his program. So, but he did say that he would be continuing it till the end of this month and then reassess or assess what he's going to be doing going forward. And that will be based on how much money was raised and what the current situation is with everything going on with the virus. I think it's a great idea. And once again, I was happy to take part. Paula says, my daughter was in town and started watching the game show with me. And about halfway through, I told her we could stop watching. And her response was, no, I'm too invested now not to finish. You wanted to stop watching, Paula. That's what I get for your comment. Totally fine. Yeah, well, to tell you the truth, Paula, being that the way I was playing in the middle of that game, I would have stopped watching too. I wanted to stop watching too. No, I'm kidding. Thank you, Christine. Thank you for that compliment about me being charming. That's funny. Carrie says, you've been on stage. You do that. Interviews don't seem like that big of a deal. Well, that certainly helps, Carrie. But that certainly helps. And there was a time, and as I've pointed out, what helps me do Unfound is having a background in improv and speaking to groups. That certainly helps. Indy says the joke went over well. It was the only one I had, Indy, at least the only one I could tell on a family program. And Kristen, I think honestly, yes, IRK. I really know. So it was good. And I hope that the other hosts had a great time too. I hope. Kathy, I wanted the games to go on longer. Well, I wanted to go on them. Me too, Kathy, because I wanted to work my way back up to the lead. So yeah, I'm glad you enjoyed it. I just ran out of questions to try to get back to the top. Let's move on to some other things. I don't. You should know that I don't have any plans right now for another interview anywhere, and I'm not due to play any game shows anytime soon either. Totally fine by me. So I don't know when my next appearance outside of the live show, the think tank, or the episodes will be happening. I'm guessing it, unless Dr. Telesco and I work out something for June. Then it may not be until the fall that anything is going on with me and with me personally outside of Unfound. Of course, I had a poll in the group regarding all of my assistants and are they totally awesome? And I got a nice resounding yes. Of course, I know a lot of you voted in that poll. Once again, as you're watching, please give this video a thumbs up. Please like this video if you are watching right now. I deeply appreciate it. Want to tell you about some other things. Do not forget patreon.com/unfound podcast. We've had some new Patreon people within the last couple weeks, and it's really nice. Of course, I've kind of laid off on a little bit on the podcast because I do know that there are a lot of people out there whose hours have been restricted. They've lost their jobs. They've been furloughed, especially in the service industry, restaurants, nail salons, gyms, places like that. So I didn't want to hit it. I don't want to hit it too hard regarding Patreon and asking people to support the program when I know that there are other people out there who are losing their jobs. But I will tell you here, patreon.com/unfound podcast. You get a lot of stuff. Probably get more stuff to read, more stuff to watch, etc. than any other Patreon system out there from any other program. Pretty sure about that. When I consider that I now have about 150, no, maybe not that many, 130 blogs written there that automatically you get access to regarding a lot of Unfound's disappearances, my thoughts that you don't hear on the episodes. Of course, you get some access to some free ebooks. If you're into that, once again, me writing about some of the cases that we've covered so far going back to the first year. You get, if you go to the premium level, you get access to the think tank, which everybody loves, and where you get to have a direct influence on the information that goes back to the guest for that episode that we're talking about. I don't know where you get that anywhere else. I just don't know. It sounds like a pretty good deal to me. What we don't do there, and this is something we'll never do, we will never have any episodes there where you have to pay to see them. We will never do that. All of Unfound's episodes, my interviews that I do with guests will always be free. Always. I think that Cherie, is that a link to the game show and the interview? I'm taking for granted that that's what those YouTube links are. Yes. Okay. Thank you, Cherie. I want to move on to this. This is something that I'd put in my notes, but then right before I came on the air tonight, I found out that unfortunately it was not the remains of Kelly Rothwell, but my friend Lee Clifton, who was on Unfound way back at the beginning in 2016, where she was on to talk about the disappearance of Kelly Rothwell, who disappeared. I'm pointing this way. Let me think about this. She disappeared about 4 miles that way. In fact, if I go down, I'll go right back past where she lived at the time, and I drive by where her car was left all the time as well. But there were some remains found. I'll just read what the article was. A human skull has been found along a route by the Catherine Trail and the Chemung River in Elmira, New York. Now, you may be saying, well, she disappeared in Florida. Why are you talking about New York? Well, I'm going to tell you. According to an old girlfriend, David Perry, who was Kelly Rothwell's boyfriend when she disappeared, and he is presumed to have killed her. David Perry would ride his bike up the Catherine Trail for miles. This girlfriend said he was obsessed with it. Killers often return to the scene of the crime. That's all true. That's Lee writing something at the Bring Kelly Rothwell Home or Bring Kelly Home Facebook page. We now know that the skull that was found is not Kelly Rothwell's. It is of a male, although the skull has not been identified yet. In an update that Lee wrote this evening, it is believed that they may be the remains of a prisoner who escaped police custody or who escaped the jail up there and went into the river. I don't know how many years ago this happened or anything, but that is what the belief is right at this time. Either way, whether it's a prisoner or somebody who was canoeing on the river and drowned or whatever, it's a male, not a female, so it's not Kelly Rothwell. The only reason, the very reason that I even bring it up is because the theory that Lee Clifton, that's a woman, by the way, and she writes at TampaBayCrimeReport.com. Her theory is that, and this is not a secret, her theory is that David killed Kelly, put her in a bag that you would put a surfboard in, and put her in his car and drove to New York, and that is where he disposed of her. Because he had connections to New York, he had family there. Because as soon as she was discovered missing, by the time they figured out where David was, he was in New York already. And if you haven't listened to that episode, please go back and listen to it. It's actually a 2-parter. That's when I used to do that. Of course, we don't do that anymore. But you can go back and listen to the interview that I did with Lee going back very early on in Unfound's existence. I think that was October of 2016. It was like the 4th or 5th interview I did, something like that. And if you'd like to know more about Kelly's disappearance, once again, this is a disappearance that happened just down the street from where I live now. And of course, it was just south of me now, but north of where I used to live in Madeira Beach. I don't know if that's one's ever going to be solved, but here's what I know. I know that Lee Clifton, as long as she is on this earth, will not stop in trying to put David Perry away for killing Kelly Rothwell. So and I posted about that in the group. And once again, I would urge you to go to her website, TampaBayCrimeReport.com. She does a lot of great work there. Miranda says, I did great on the game show. Thank you, Miranda. Miranda says, that joke cracked me up. I'm just glad I could do it on cue. I'm glad I wasn't there, twiddling my thumbs or something and going, So I'm glad it looked scripted, but it was not. Cherie is also putting in there the link to the Facebook group. I'm going to guess a lot of you are already in there if you have Facebook accounts, but facebook.com/groups/Unfound podcast. There are now about 7,200 people in there. It's crazy. And I think we have like 8,500 likes for the page. And what's weird is that I don't think I even started a page for Unfound until like 2018 or something. Usually these days, most people, they start a podcast, boom. In fact, they start the page on Facebook before they start the podcast. I think I did we did Unfound for like, let me think about this. At least a year and a half before Paige even got started. I don't know. Like I said, I know. What do I know? It's funny looking back at it now, but that's the truth. So that for a long time, there were way more people in the group than had liked the page. And now the page likes are like 1,000 higher or something like that. Hello, Pamela. What's going on? She even put in some capital letters. Hi, everyone. Long time. Yes, it's been a long time, Pamela. Good to see you. I had a person ask a question. Let me see if I can find it. Hold on. Just 1 second. I'm going to go off camera for her for a second. Let me see. I want to make sure I got this person's name correct, because I had posted, I needed some more. Hold on a second. Well, this isn't very good. You're not being a very good host, Ed, here. So I forget her name. I think it started with a C, and I can't remember it, and I want to give her credit. The other reason I don't. Oh, I got some more questions in here now, too. Okay. Cassandra, with one S, asked me, how do we pick the cases we cover? Cassandra, if you were watching, I know this is going to sound like a really weird answer, but we really don't pick the cases. The cases pick us. People choose to come on the program. As Emily stated last Friday during the Unfound, during the team episode, we find disappearances. They're in the news, and we try to find those people that have commented on it, have been interviewed, and then Emily will contact those people and see if they desire to talk to her. As you heard her say, we have about a 50% response rate. And then even when it gets to after that, that percentage even comes down. I would say that 1 out of 4 people that we contact end up being on the program. And that's after doing this for 3.5 years. That's just the way it is. But the people that come on the program, they choose to be on the program. It's not like we can force them. So if you want to say choose, quote unquote, choose, we really don't choose cases. We just go out there and see what disappearances are in the news. Maybe there have been an article from like 25 years ago where a mother was interviewed, and then we will try to track her down, see if she has an Unfound or a Facebook account, see if she has an email, see if there's a phone number, and try to track her down and talk to her. It's ultimately up to these people whether they choose to be on the program or not. But I wouldn't say there's a very scientific approach. I wouldn't say we're not necessarily looking for different types of cases, although that personally I love covering those disappearances that haven't gotten a lot of attention. I love covering ones that maybe aren't on NamUs, aren't on the Charlie Project. We have been trying to get more minorities, Native American women, Indigenous people from Canada, minorities here in the United States. We try to do that. Sometimes we're successful, sometimes we're not. But we'll talk to anybody virtually, but they choose to be on the program. So we don't pick the cases. We just go out there and try to find people who are, have emails or Facebook accounts where we can contact them. That's how the process gets started. Miranda, do you ever turn down cases? Have you ever? Yes, I have. Certainly have. Mainly because I thought that the person was lying. Not necessarily that the person was a suspect, but I just felt that the person was withholding information for whatever reason. That'll certainly make you not, will cause you to not be on the program. And also, if a person says, well, I only want to talk about this over here and I don't want to talk about that over there. I'm here to cover all aspects of a disappearance, not just half. So that will also cause me to say, well, then I just guess we just can't do it. And that doesn't happen often. What happens way more often is people say they're going to come on the program and then they stand me up, like happened a week and a half ago. That happens way more often than us deciding somebody can't be on the program. Trust me. Another question: how do you respond if you suspect a guest is lying? Well, if I suspect a guest is lying, they don't get on the program. Just period. And we sort that out well before they get to the interview, the official interview stage. If I'm talking to a guest and I take some of what they say and I start looking into it and it doesn't add up, then they aren't on the program. That's how I handle it. I don't call them a liar. I don't call them out. I just can't. There's too many other people that I talk to who are telling the truth to spend time with people who are going to lie for whatever reason. I'm not saying these people are suspects, but people have their reasons. What's my favorite season? Summer. That's why I live in Florida. Alexis asked me that simply because I got enough snow when I lived in Pennsylvania from 1970 until 1998. Plenty cold weather, plenty of snow. And then adding on top of that, when I spent last winter up there because of my mother's death, I was there from November until the end of January. That was enough snow and cold for one lifetime too. So I will come back to those questions in a bit. What I want to talk about now is some very big news. Very big news. And I already posted this in the group and on the page, but I'm going to talk about it here just because I'm so thrilled about it. If you don't know, being that somebody just asked me, how do we pick cases? You should know, I keep a list of every person that I've ever talked to for Unfound. Every person, whether they've been on the program or not. So I have a list. It's a spreadsheet. It's very long, as you might suspect. A lot of the people on that list have been on the program. I will put the disappearance in the first column, and I will put the guest's name or the person I talked to a couple columns over, and then just some notes. Who is this person? A mother, a sister, whoever. And if they've been on the program, they get highlighted in green. If they flaked or something, they stopped returning calls, I'll put it in red, and I'll put a little kind of some words there to remind me exactly what happened. And then there are still quite a few that are still in the natural color of black because we just haven't gotten to the point. There's maybe just not enough information, or the person isn't ready to become on the program. There's, like I said, 3 colors: black, green, and red. Green have been on the program. Red will probably never be on the program. And then the black ones are still in that what you might call purgatory. And once in a while, I will go back to that list. And I'm updating that, every week. As I talk to people, as Emily contacts people, sends them my way, I put those people's names in this database, the disappearance and the name. And that, that can remind me, if somebody asked me, hey, did you ever have a chance to cover that disappearance? I can go to that list and say, nope, I didn't, or yes, I did. But what happened was, once in a while, I go to that list and I get back in touch with some of those people who are in the black, like I said, the purgatory. Just weren't ready to come on the program. Something was going on in their life. Maybe they were going to be having surgery. Maybe they were having some health problems. They wanted to come on the program, but just wasn't yet the right time. And that happens. Well, I started going through that list a few days ago, and the oldest case currently on that list. Now, the oldest case that used to be on the list was Dorianne Myers. I originally talked to her sister, Donna Jean, in November of 2016, and Donna Jean wasn't on the program until the summer of 2019, so essentially 2.5 years. And I still say to this day, I suspect the reason she eventually came on the program is because she knew her health was failing, and she might not have an opportunity to do the interview sometime down the road. And that's exactly what happened. Of course, she passed away last year in October. Well, I went back to the very first case on the list, once taking me back to the beginning of 2017, over 3 years ago. And I had talked to a guy, this is not a relative in this disappearance, but a guy who has been working on this disappearance himself and some others together as amateurs, and he's never been on the program yet. And I looked at that disappearance and I said, well, I wonder if there's any new things going on. And just did a Google search like any of you would do. And I discovered that you have to remember something. The reason that this guy, who I like a lot, the reason he wouldn't come on the program is because at the time back in 2017, and it's a very old disappearance, 30 years old at least. And the reason he wouldn't come on the program is because the number one suspect in the disappearance was still alive. And this guy was known as being somewhat litigious. And in fact, he had sued a police department who had brought his name up in regards to this disappearance. So this guy, he was, hesitant, didn't want to get himself in trouble. I think he doesn't want to have to go to court, doesn't want to get sued. I'm not saying that he would have, but he didn't even want to put that in the realm of possibility. So he couldn't come on the program. But we still talk once in a while, but it had been a while since we really communicated. Well, in researching this disappearance, just Googling it, what did I find out? The suspect in this disappearance passed away a few months ago. I was like, well, it's bad news from a standpoint is if he did cause this disappearance, then of course he can't answer for it. And that sucks. But on the other hand, I'm thinking, well, now that he's deceased, maybe this guy will come on the program. And I still had his phone number from over 3 years ago. And I called him up and we got to talk yesterday, or was it the day before? And we're going to be doing the interview this Saturday. And I'm really excited about it because of that. It's a disappearance that I've known about for a long time, even before I started Unfound. Like I said, there is a suspect, a very good suspect in this disappearance, unfortunately is now deceased. But the other big deal is that there is a decent possibility, and you will hear from this guest, that this suspect may have committed other disappearances. Of course, we could call them murders as well. So there are other missing women, who can be connected to this guy as well. So I'm going to be doing that interview this Saturday at 1 p.m. Eastern, and very excited about it. Because now that this guy is deceased, now his name can be really, really put out there because everybody was afraid to. I think if you really kind of look in the real nooks and crannies of the internet, you can find his name, but it's not out there like many other names of suspects and other disappearances. But this guy, he came hard at anybody who tried to connect him to the particular disappearance that we're going to be really interviewing, but we're also going to be talking about 2 other disappearances during my interview with this guest. And this guest has done fantastic work for an amateur and some other people helping him who are also amateurs. They've done fantastic work. And I can't wait for you to hear about it. I'm thinking that this will be next Friday's episode. I'm thinking it's going to be long. I don't know if it's going to be 4 hours long, but it's going to be a long one. We have a lot to talk about. He has a lot to talk about because of the work that he's done personally. And I know that he's going to be happy about it because now he can talk about this suspect without having to look over his shoulder for any lawyers. So I'm just, it's just a shame that this guy, if he did commit this disappearance and these other disappearances, he's not going to get to answer for it here in the material world. That's a dang shame. But now that he's gone, we can talk about him. People can look into him even more without worrying about being sued or getting taken to court, which, I guess at this point, you just have to look on the good side. So it's a big development. For me personally, this is a disappearance that, like I said, I've known about it for several years, well before Unfound started. I'm talking I've maybe known about this disappearance for 20 years, maybe. Because it is unique. Once you hear it, it is a unique disappearance. And I don't like to use adjectives too much. But once you hear it, I think you'll understand why. Then, in addition, to think that this guy could be connected to some other disappearances and could be a serial killer, it's certainly something. What I will tell you is you all know about it later on Saturday. I don't want to jinx it. I feel like I could talk about it and tell you what the case is and who this guy is and everything. And then something will happen and he doesn't do the interview Saturday. And then it'll be like, so I don't want to jinx it, but I promise you, after the interview happens on Saturday and it records and everything goes great, I will release to the public the disappearances that will be in the interview, and I will of course reveal who this guy is. But it's just crazy how these things work. But this is the exact reason I keep that list, because you never know what's going to happen. And I don't like forgetting about these disappearances where I've talked to people. And if I didn't keep a list like this, there would be no way for me to go back and look at it and to remind myself, oh yeah, right. Let's go back and take another look at that. Well, that's what I did. And this is what has happened. So big development. Very, right up there with Dorian's disappearance, which once again worked on Donna Jean for like 2.5 years until she came on the program. And that was a big deal. And of course, because of that, that's the reason I talked about it during my interview with Dr. Telesco last week. Had I not done the interview with Donna Jean last summer, then I wouldn't have talked about Dorian Myers' disappearance last Thursday. That's just how these things work. So now we'll get the information out there. Unfound will surely be the first program anywhere to go public with the name of the suspect in these disappearances. In fact, I don't think most people even know that these disappearances are connected at this point. And so that will be a revelation as well. So very excited. Very excited. Shauna asked me, how many cases have you helped solve? Shauna, very few of the cases that Unfound has covered have been solved. And I would hesitate to say that Unfound helped any of them. But here's what I do know. I do know that we've certainly given a lot of families new things to do, new avenues to consider. We've certainly given them support. A lot of them kind of don't know what to do. So I try to give them things to do from my experience. I hope there's one day where Unfound can say, yes, our coverage directly led to this disappearance being solved. I hope that, but if that never happens, that's our goal. That's certainly our goal. Our goal is to solve all of these cases, but sometimes that doesn't mean we have to be directly responsible for it. You can look at something like, I will say this. I mean, I don't know if this is crazy or not, but regarding Tom Brown's case, I got to tell you, I'm inclined to believe if Unfound doesn't cover Tom's disappearance during the summer of 2018, I think Nathan Lewis is still the sheriff there. I think. And we certainly brought a different dimension to that disappearance. And it certainly caused people to think about it in a different way. And I think what it did is it put more focus on the sheriff's department itself, which obviously a department that was in shambles. And I think by Unfound covering the disappearance the way we did, maybe Tom's case isn't solved yet, but I think that the Hemphill County Sheriff's Department is better because of Unfound's coverage. And I think we could, if I were to go through a lot of the other cases, we could point at a lot of different things in which we've helped families move their cases forward. But how many cases have you helped solve? The answer is still zero. But that's I'm not afraid to say that. But I can tell you the goal is to help solve them. And we'll keep working toward that. I don't mind saying it's been zero. I still think we're doing great work. Carrie says the team is very good at vetting info. I think so, Carrie. Heather, what is the strangest case you've covered? Heather, I really don't think of cases as being strange. Shauna, or have you ever had people pissed or mad because they were a suspect in a case? Oh, yeah. In fact, Shauna, I just got a message yesterday from the son of a woman who was mentioned as a suspect or a person of interest, or was mentioned during the course of an interview during a disappearance. I'm not going to tell you which one it was. And he was not pleased. I got one just yesterday. And my response to him was, here at Unfound, we're only concerned about the truth. And unless you can point out something in the interview that was a lie, I don't think we have anything to talk about. That's what I told him. I said, he said that his mother was being threatened and everything. And I said, well, we never called her a suspect in the disappearance. All we did was talk about the facts. And I told him, I can't be responsible if people are kooks are going to take factual and responsible reporting and use it for their own devices. I can't help that. I said, I would report any threats that your mother is getting to your local law enforcement. That's what I told him. I don't know what else I'm supposed to say. And this is really what usually it comes down to, Shauna, is that people do complain, but they never actually state why they're complaining. They just don't like names being mentioned. I mean, really, we can't mention where the guy was headed that day. We can't mention who the woman was last seen with. Really? Really? That's all we do. And there's certainly no illegality, immorality, or any question of ethics regarding any of that. But yes, I do get some messages. Carrie says, I'm pumped. Yeah, Carrie knows. Indy says, wow, interesting development. This episode should be a good one. Well, I'd like to think they're all episode, Indy, but this is one I've been waiting for a while. And I think that you hear that in my voice. Let's go back and see if I have any more questions here. Hold on. April asked me, and April, I believe, is a former guest on Unfound. She asked me what motivated me to become an investigative journalist. Kind of just fell into it. I think, as I've explained sometimes, it's just a lot of different things put together. My interest, along with, I think, how my brain works. It's not like in high school, I wanted to be a reporter. I didn't work for my school newspaper in high school. I didn't work for the school paper in college, even though one of my best friends, who is still a very, very close friend of mine to this day, was the editor of the paper in college. He was responsible for everything that went in it. Never did anything for it. So I don't know. I think it just goes with just a lot of things just came together. That's all I can really say. Natty, N-A-T-I, asked me, do you get tips and leads from the cases you cover? And other than sharing with law enforcement, do you advise family as well? Natty, if you're out there, you're a new name to me, so I don't know you. That's great, though. New people are accepted. Absolutely. Any leads, any tips, any people that email me and say, hey, I heard your interview and I think I know something, I do not send that to law enforcement. What I do is I go directly to the guest. Here's the information I got. Let's talk about it. And then they can decide what they want to do with it. I will give a suggestion, a recommendation, but ultimately it's up to the family or whoever the guest is to decide what he or she wants to do with it. I don't go to law enforcement because that feels like I'm taking my guest out of the equation, and they absolutely should be in the equation. So I really don't talk to law enforcement much, except in the what was the disappearance where, let me think about it. Jansen Bruder and Daniel Braden disappearance. I had an investigator from the Attorney General's office or the district attorney's office call me one-on-one and asked me, he knew that I had talked to Scotty. If you go back to that episode, I talked to him, and I had talked to somebody else who said they had some information about some video regarding that disappearance. And I passed, being that I had those discussions on Messenger, I was able to copy those discussions and give them to that investigator. That was about almost a year ago now. I have no idea what went on there, but this guy called me from, was it Tennessee? And I was more than happy to help him. Of course, if law enforcement calls me and says that they heard I might, have something or heard something, then I'll talk to them. But I don't go to them. I go to the guest, and then the guest can figure out what he or she wants to do. Let's move on to what else do I want to talk about for the live show. We are moving right along. This is the tough thing about having the computer on the left side. Then just a couple updates. Still nothing on Vanessa Guillen, who disappeared from Fort Hood. Weirdly enough, we are working on a disappearance right now at Unfound of a young man who disappeared from another Army base back in the 1970s, strangely enough. So I think that the one we're working on probably will come out. I don't have a schedule for an interview date. In fact, haven't even put together an interview outline yet. But I'm guessing that I will conduct that interview within the next few weeks. We're working on some things right now behind the scenes on that. But weirdly enough, Vanessa Guillen getting a lot of national attention because she disappeared. There's no new information except from what I know. But we will be covering our own missing military member, I think, within the next 3 weeks. And once again, this goes back to the 1970s. Christine said, I really enjoyed last Friday's episode. You and your team have such great relationship. Thanks. That's why Unfound is getting so successful. Well, thank you, Christine. Pamela, could some of the reason be the case you helped on in Vegas? Pamela, you're probably going to have to explain that a little more deeply. Take your time, type it out, and I will gladly answer that. Shauna, thank you. I'm not going to read that. Thank you, Shauna. I'm just going to leave it at that. That's very complimentary. I don't want to read it and be self-serving, but Shauna, you're very kind. Thank you. So no news on Vanessa Guillen, at least from what I know. I did do a Google search on it today, and it doesn't seem like anything has changed since last Wednesday. Now, on the other hand, I probably am going to have to at least partially retract what I said about the disappearances and now the recoveries of the remains of Stephanie Mayorga and Paige Escalera. There's now a lot more information out there since last Wednesday. They've even described where this intersection is, and I actually looked at it on Google Satellite View today. And I think, of course, last week, I thought, well, maybe they were, texting and driving or something like that. But then I found out a little bit more about one of these young women who might have had, she might have tried to commit suicide at some point, but it seems pretty clear that they just ran off this road, or whoever's driving ran off this road. If you look at it, this road is very straight. And then I wouldn't say that it comes to a T, but there's surely a stop sign there or something. And the car blew right through the stop sign and launched itself like 150 feet and landed in this marsh. And that's why originally the police and firemen who went there trying to look for this car could not find it. I even read here in an article where it says that there was a tree 48 feet from the street where the car hit it 8 feet up. 8 feet off. The car was 8 feet off the ground and hit this, and the tree was 48 feet from the street. And the curb was damaged. And yeah, like I said last week, I really didn't know what the street was or some of these other things, but I'm going to have to say that I kind of gonna have to change my mind. I think there is a greater possibility that this might have been something, a suicide. I'm not saying both of the women wanted to commit suicide, but maybe the driver did and wanted to take her girlfriend, or were they married, with her. So it's one of those things, though. I'm not sure we're ever going to know. I don't know. It very well could be that this was a suicide, wrecking it on purpose. On the other hand, it could be they just didn't know where they were and just blew through. It wasn't, once again, texting and driving or something and blew through there, and that's what happened. But I think just looking at the intersection and everything, it does raise the possibility this might have been on purpose. Pamela says, the guy that went missing, I think you helped. Well, that's happened a lot, Pamela. Vegas. Could some of this reason be the case you helped on in Vegas? Well, we've covered a few different Vegas disappearances. Pamela, of course, Amanda Fravel, Jesse Foster. I talked about my personal experience with, you're talking about Steven Kocher? Is that who she's talking about? Well, I had some personal experience with that. I was there. I was on that street. I parked my car where Steven's car was. I walked on that street. I was there. And that's certainly, but I would say that I was interested in disappearances and mysteries before that, but that definitely gave me an opportunity to be there firsthand. And of course, I walked on that search that they did off St. Rose Parkway by the Henderson Executive Airport. That happened in April of 2011. That's over 9 years ago. That's crazy. Cherie says estimated 100 miles an hour for Stephanie and Paige. Yeah, that's what I've read too, Cherie. Crazy. But that certainly helped. I don't know if working on Steven's disappearance led to me starting Unfound. I wouldn't, because there was a lot of time between 2009, 2010, and 2016. But I do know this: once you're involved in that and people are looking to you, like people on Web Sleuths were looking to me, we'll go over here and see what this is about. It certainly puts you in the middle of it and you feel like you're doing something good. And it's, at least once again, for me, my mind, my personality, that's works well for me. So Stephanie Mayorga and Paige Escalera, I think we're going to have to raise the probability that this might have been some type of suicide pact by at least one of them, and maybe she took the other girl with her. But raise, I don't know if it's 100%, but definitely compared to what I said last week, the odds are definitely increased. Regarding the team episode from last Friday, I knew it was going to be long. I didn't know it was going to be 4 hours long. But I think that all of the interviews, strangely enough, were about the same length. At least that's how I perceived it, which is weird because that's not how I planned it out. We just started talking, and the interviews just went as long as they went. But as I've said, I think I said this in the think tank on Sunday, that I learned something new about all 5 of my assistants that I talked to. And of course, we can't forget Eric, but I've already explained why Eric was not on the episode. He was already on Unfound way back in 2017. He'll get over it. But for the 5 that were on the episode last Friday, I learned something new about all of them. And that was cool because I've known some of them for a while, except for Natasha, who is maybe 4 or 5 months into being with Unfound. But Cherie since 2018, Carrie 2018, Heather 2018, and then Emily going way back to 2017. So it was fun. And all the banter and laughs and giggles and jokes and things that you heard, all real. Absolutely 100% genuine. Carrie says, kind of wanted to go into hiding, but it was still fun to do. Thank you for doing it. Thank you for the one that suggested it. That was Tammy, a think tank member, who suggested it. Shauna, do I ever lose any sleep over in these cases? No, I don't. No, I am a sound sleeper. In fact, I think doing this program has made me sleep better because I think that, I wrote about in the Patreon blog, and I'm not going to, some of you are Patreon members, but in the blog this week, really revealed a lot about myself that probably I don't usually do. And so that goes to that. I think the reason that I sleep a lot better these days and I've always been a great sleeper. In fact, I'm telling you, there's a bed like right here. If I was lay down on this bed, I would probably go to sleep in 10 minutes. That's just the way I am. But once I, close my eyes and really concentrate, boop, I'll be out. But really revealed a lot of things about myself, about my teenage years, and then what happened in my 20s and 30s. And, you get to a point where I did a lot of great things before I was even 19 years old. Had a lot of accomplishments, won a lot of things, did well in high school, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then about from the age of 19 until probably my early 40s, although I'd decent life, had a lot of fun, lived in Las Vegas, I loved it and everything else, really a lot of mediocrity. I loved working at Star Trek, very special, made a lot of friends there. And I'm not talking about the friend side of it. It's just about the personal development, about setting goals and being able to reach them. And really didn't do that. And, once you get started, toward 40, and I'm, just a few months away from being 50, you start wondering, what exactly is going on with your life, Ed? Everything that, these things that you accomplished and everything was all before you were 19 years old. And you start to think about that. And I'm very fortunate. Some of the things that began to happen in 2010, 2011, maybe that was part of that. Somebody asked me earlier, Vegas, maybe coming to Florida, kind of switched the karma up. If you believe in that type of thing, I'm not necessarily saying that I do, but just kind of turn things around a little bit. And then being able to start Unfound and being always focused on helping other people and working in a team, which is something I frankly had a problems doing for most of my life. And to the point where there are people like the people that you heard on Friday, where they come do the program, they come to me because they wanted to help with a program, and all these people are volunteers. That is a total turnaround from where my life was not that long ago. And so when you ask me about sleeping, I sleep very well because it really feels like we are doing something good. It's morally good. It's legally good. It's ethically good. And that was something that I've never had a chance to do. So I sleep well at night knowing that I know that we are all, me personally speaking for myself, I know personally I'm giving all of these people as much as I can give. So, and that, once again, that wasn't something that I don't think that I was equipped to do earlier in my life because, frankly, for too long, it was all about me, just to be honest. And I think maybe you've heard that once in a while on this show. I can be a little prickly. I can be. And the other problem is that it's sometimes I do have a very sharp tongue. And but to be able to do this and get excited about helping these people and finding new things for them and going after bad people, as I think we are doing most of the time on Unfound, uh, that greatly so much enriches my life more than in any other point in my life. And that's where that's where I come from for this program. This, once again, I keep saying it, this is not a show. This is not something where we're here to show off our knowledge and get or anything like that. We're here to have these people on the program to tell their stories and to give focus to these disappearances with the main goal of solving them, whether we are personally responsible for solving them or not. So when you ask me about sleep and all that stuff, I sleep well, very well. Whether it was when I lived here or when I lived down in Madeira Beach, doesn't matter. I always sleep very well. And the other thing on top of everything else is that Unfound is special to me because that was the last conversation that I had with my mother before she died. Now, that was like 10 days before she died, but those last 10 days, she couldn't communicate too much. But the last conversation I had back and forth was about this very program. And so when I think of Unfound, I think of my mother, and I think of doing this program, in honor of her. So that's the way it is. And that's no BS. That is 100% true. She, with, there was no bigger support of Unfound than my mother. And, she put me in a position where when she passed away, where I could continue to do this program in the way that it needs to be done. And where, I could just do this program. And like I said, for a very, very, very long time. So she gets all the credit. So there's that as well. What else? Do we have any more? I think we have all the questions answered. By the way, there's a new Twitter account. I had to start from scratch on that. We have a huge 17 followers right now. I think we had about 1,500 when that other account went kaput. My fault. But we have a new Twitter account. It's the same address and everything. It's at Unfound Podcast, except it's new. So if you're on Twitter or you'd like to be on Twitter, get an account and follow us on there. And I post about things I see in the news and a link to disappearances, old Unfound disappearances on Podomatic. And that's what we do there. Maybe get a little bit different side of the program if you're not on Twitter. To me, it feels like Twitter is kind of a younger person type of social media. But I know there are a lot of older people like myself on there too. So do not forget about that. But we do have a new account, twitter.com/Unfound Podcast. Thank you for posting that, Cherie. One more thing before I get to this Friday's disappearance. And yes, we're getting back to disappearances this Friday. After doing a Q&A episode, an in memoriam episode, and then the team episode, we go back to disappearances this week. But a little pet peeve. Nothing ticks me off more when I'm looking into a disappearance than finding news articles that tell you nothing. I'm in the process of working on a disappearance out of Canada, out of British Columbia, and there could be, once again, this is totally different than what I talked about, this new development. I'm looking into a disappearance. There could be some other disappearances that could be connected. I don't know really at this point. But you go to the articles for these disappearances and it gives you no information. Just tells you, well, this is the time, this is the date, this woman disappeared. Doesn't tell you if she was driving somewhere. Doesn't tell you who she was last seen with. Doesn't tell you the time of day. Doesn't tell you if she was having any problems with anybody. Nothing. Doesn't tell you any phone information. Nothing. Nothing ticks me off more. It's just, and because this is the way, as I talked about last Thursday with Dr. Lesko, and I know Joyce is in here, that's the way that these disappearances get forgotten. When you write an article and there's no details. You know, it looks like the reporter spent 20 seconds putting it together and had to move on to something else. Ticks me off. Exasperating. And I find that too much. I find that too much in some of these disappearances that we end up looking into where there are very, very few details. And it's obvious to me that these reporters just phoning it in. Just getting to what they're doing, really, they're getting to a certain word count and stopping. That's essentially what's happening. It's sick. It's sick. I hate it. I hate it. So that's why we do very complete interviews on Unfound. We're trying to do the opposite of that. Carrie's going to say, I will say it for Eric. Yeah, I had a Twitter fail. Yeah, I definitely Twitter failed at the beginning of April, Carrie. I think I've owned up to it. I didn't put the blame on anybody else but myself. I just don't think it needed to be 4 weeks, to get back on there when it was obvious that I made a typo. Stupid. Sheree is also publicizing the Instagram account, instagram.com/Unfound Podcast. Been using there a little bit more, been using the story feature on there a little bit more. In fact, I just put something on there right before we came on the air tonight. Shauna says, good night from near Toronto, Canada. Good work. Got to work at 6 a.m. Shauna, you hang in there up in Canada. I think we're going to be covering a Canada disappearance, but from British Columbia within the next month, probably. And I'm a big fan of Toronto. I've gone fishing to Rice Lake probably 30 times in my life. Love that area. Love going up there, Shauna. Love it during the summer. Probably could not stand it in the winter. And yes, the website, which is Natasha's doing such a great job with, theunfoundpodcast.com. Let's talk about this Friday's disappearance. We're going back to Texas again. I don't know why that is, why we've covered so many cases in Texas. And in fact, three of my assistants are in Texas, Sheree, Heather, and Emily. But we're going to be covering the disappearance of Danielle Sleeper. She disappeared from Magnolia, Texas on March 22nd, 2015. It's an episode that I'm calling Return of a Friend. And the guest will be Danielle's mother, Dinah Street. This is going to be one of those disappearances that we've run across, probably one of the most common types of disappearances that we cover on Unfound, and not just cover on Unfound, but I think that they are popular. They're plentiful just in general, where the husband just says, I don't know. I got up and she left. We've covered that before. Julie Early, Charlotte Paulus, Christy Nichols, even just maybe 5-6 weeks ago. Rosemary Rapp is the disappearance that comes to mind most prominently regarding this kind of disappearance. I don't know why. That's a disappearance that goes back to 2018, but it is your prototypical this kind of disappearance. But the story is this. Full Metal says, that's near me, Magnolia. Yeah, well, that's where we're going to be. That's where we're going Friday. Full Metal. Danielle ended up marrying a guy that she was friends with in high school. His name was Austin. And she had 2 sons from a prior marriage. And then Danielle and Austin had a son. And as you will hear Dinah tell it, this marriage started to go south. Austin was very controlling. He was accused of physically abusing Danielle's other 2 sons from the previous marriage. And in fact, there was investigation going on about this at the time of Danielle's disappearance. What happened on the evening before, on March 21st, which was a Saturday, Danielle, her husband, Austin, and their son, Hagen, went to a get-together, a party, at Danielle's friend's house. Her name is Megan. Danielle and Austin went there in separate vehicles. They were coming from different directions or something. And the party went into the early morning of March 22nd, like to 1 a.m. And Danielle and Austin started getting into a fight. Danielle wanted to stay at her friend's place. Austin wanted her to come home. And Danielle, of course, decided to go with Austin, but left her vehicle there. They left in Austin's truck. Hagen, of course, their son, went with them. Then what Austin says happened is that they went home, and he got up the next day. He says that Danielle was still there. Well, he had a prearranged meeting with some friends of his, names Charles and Spody. I think that's a nickname. At 11:30 a.m. that morning, and went there, got together with these guys. These guys verified it. And then allegedly, Austin then went home to find Danielle not there. And then allegedly right after that, well, not allegedly, but he did, right after that, he went to pick Danielle's Suburban, that was her vehicle, up at where the party was held the day before. And when he went over there, he told, what he says happened is between him meeting his buddies 11:30 and then going home is when Danielle wasn't there. But when he went to pick up Danielle's vehicle and he saw her friend Megan, he didn't say anything about her not being there. About Danielle not being at home. All he said was, well, don't worry about Danielle. She won't be coming over here anymore. And that's how the disappearance got started. So you're going to get to hear from Dinah, and you will also hear from the notes that I took from Danielle's older sister, Tana, who went over to Austin's the day after. So that would be a Monday, March 23rd, and got to talk to Austin one-on-one. And she talks about how he acted, what he said, what she saw. And that's how this disappearance stands to this day. But you're going to hear all the intricacies of this. And you're also going to hear about how Austin seems to have failing memory about some of this, and also how he tells a story where what he explains happened, the time and distance and the amount of miles he could have covered could not have happened in the amount of time that he said he did it. So once again, Danielle Sleeper, disappearance March 22nd, 2015, Magnolia, Texas. The episode is being called Return of a Friend because Austin was a friend of Danielle's who came back into her life. So there you go. This is going to be a disappearance. The interview was over 2 hours long. A lot of moving parts is what I would say in this disappearance. Even though it is your general type of guy gets up and says his wife's gone, still a lot of moving parts, a lot of names involved and locations, and still some times, and some strange things went on in the days before this disappearance happened. So that's for this Friday, and I'm sure that Natasha will make a preview video for that if anybody wants to hear that again. One more thing I do want to talk about that caught my eye before I end this live show tonight was this Iowa trucker, Clark Baldwin, who has been caught through DNA for some murders that he committed in the early 90s in Wyoming, and 2 in Wyoming and 2 in Tennessee. Actually, the one in Tennessee was a pregnant woman. She died, and her baby died as well. The reason it caught my eye is he's from Iowa. And so because I always think of Iowa, I think of Jodi Huisentruit. So I actually sent that article to Caroline Lowe, who is an expert on Jodi's disappearance. And she got back to me and says that she's well aware of it and they're keeping an eye on it. So that gives me the idea that they will investigate Clark Baldwin, this trucker and truck driver, to see if it's possible that he was in Mason City, Iowa at the time of Jodi's disappearance. I think that's very worthwhile to do. I'm also going to guess that these 4 people that he killed, I'm sure that's not the only 4 probably that he's murdered. And it does bring up the question. It seems like we do have a lot of murderers who end up being truck drivers. And I'm wondering, is this something, do they become a truck driver because they know that it'll be possible for them to murder people and easier to get away with it? Or do they become a truck driver and then at some point something clicks off in their mind thinking, I feel like feel like becoming a murderer? I wonder. I have that here. Do these guys start this job because, do they become truck drivers because they want to kill people? Mostly women. It's a fascinating question. I don't know. It's like, what came first, the chicken or the egg? I don't know if there's been any studies done on that. I'm not a psychiatrist. I'm certainly not a profiler, and I don't even really believe in that. But just in reading this, and we know about other truckers who ended up being truck drivers, who ended up being serial killers. Do they become serial killers on the job, or are they killers before they even jump in the truck? Just a question. Well, that's it. What did we do tonight? Talked just a little bit about what's been going on in my life, as I always do. Talked about Dr. Telesco's interview. Talked about the game show. Talked about the awesome poll for the team episode. Talked about the skull found, which is not Kelly Rothwell. The big news about this interview I'll be doing this Saturday. And once again, as soon as it's done and it's recorded and I know everything went right, I will let you in on all the details, and you'll have 6 days to look into all this yourself. Vanessa Guillen, no new news. However, I did say we are covering a missing military member on Unfound probably within the next month. Pet peeve, disappearance articles with no information, new Twitter account, Stephanie Mayorga and Paige Escalera looking more maybe like it was a suicide. Talked about this Iowa trucker, Clark Baldwin. Answered a ton of questions tonight. Love that. And then finally, we talked about this Friday's episode, the disappearance of Danielle Sleeper from Magnolia, Texas on March 22nd, 2015. That's it. I hope you enjoyed it tonight. Another long live show, but I love taking questions and talking about all sorts of cool stuff. Love letting you into stuff behind the scenes. And I hope all of you will have a great rest of the week. Stay safe out there. Good night. Good night, everyone. Thanks for watching. Deeply appreciated.